Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, is going to be in India at least for a few more days. Her plans of going to the UK or any other European country has run into some rough weather. They do have some reservations in granting her some form of political asylum. Hopefully that should get sorted out in the next few days. So what that means is that she is going to be in India at least for the next few days. As loyal a friend as she has been to India for the last 30 years, and we have been outlining for the better part of the last couple of days in our coverage how she has remained a steadfast and loyal supporter, friend and ally of India in her 3-decade-long political career. Today, though, in her own country, she is a political persona non grata inside Bangladesh. And it's clear from the pictures we saw yesterday as well as today, people on the streets in Dhaka and other cities and towns in Bangladesh are actually celebrating her exit. Which does lead us to ask a question. If she is going to be in India for a number of days more, because clearly Western countries seem to be loath to giving her some kind of political asylum, will India and Indian interests also become some kind of a quasi-figure of hate in the current political climate in Bangladesh? How does India engage and navigate whatever new dispensation is going to be in power in Dhaka? India had taken that part of diplomacy almost for granted in the 15 years of uninterrupted reign that Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League had since 2009. But whatever new government will take shape and form in Dhaka, one thing is sure, that both China and Pakistan will clearly have a greater influence in a new dispensation than they certainly had, if at all they had, with the Awami League and the 15-year tenure of Sheikh Hasina. So how does India navigate that diplomatic minefield? First, let's take a look at what have been the developments through the course of the last 24 hours, both in Dhaka and around the world. I'll also be joined in a moment by Sajeeb Wazed. He's the son of the former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. First, a look at the situation on the ground.
A hurried resignation and a dramatic escape to India. Hundreds storming the official residence of the Prime Minister and ransacking it. Statues of founder Sheikh Mujibur Rahman being brought down. 15 years of Sheikh Hasina's reign in Bangladesh came to a crashing halt. What began as a peaceful protest by students against a quota system for government jobs eventually turned into an uprising that left 300 people dead and forced Hasina to resign and flee the country by helicopter. Shortly after Hasina resigned, Bangladesh's army chief said they would seek the figurehead president's guidance to appoint an interim government. After meeting General Wakar-uz-Zaman and opposition politicians, President Muhammad Shahabuddin announced that parliament would be dissolved as soon as possible, leading to fresh elections. In a move to stabilize the situation, the president announced the release of opposition leader and former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia, along with other political detainees. Zia, who had been a long-time rival of Hasina, had been imprisoned on corruption charges that her supporters claimed were politically motivated. Her release is seen as a significant concession to protesters and a step towards reconciling the deeply divided political landscape in Bangladesh. The student-led protest movement, which led to Hasina's ouster, announced that Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus will be the chief advisor of the Bangladeshi interim government.
It's a celebration now all over Bangladesh that she has left. Now they're free from her. This was something that they're hoping that someday will happen. The students made it happen.
Yunus faced a number of corruption accusations and was put on trial during Hasina's rule. He received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 after he pioneered microlending. Yunus said the corruption charges against him were motivated by vengeance. While many are celebrating the end of Hasina's rule, there is also a palpable sense of uncertainty about the future of Bangladesh. The next steps taken by the interim government, the military and civil society will be crucial in determining whether Bangladesh can navigate this crisis and emerge stronger. Sheikh Hasina was the world's longest-serving female head of government. She was first elected as Prime Minister in 1996 and again in 2009, serving a total of 20 years in office. Earlier this year, Hasina won her fourth straight term in elections, but many took the victory with a pinch of salt. Hasina was accused of muzzling opposition forces and other forms of dissent, orchestrating disappearances and arranging extrajudicial killings. But ultimately, a students' protest brought down the Iron Lady of Bangladesh. In July, a bunch of them demonstrated against a controversial quota system that allocated up to 30% of government jobs for family members of veterans from Bangladesh's 1971 War of Independence against Pakistan. But protesters argued that this system is discriminatory and favors supporters of Prime Minister Hasina's Awami League party. They advocated for a merit-based system to replace the existing quota. As the violence intensified, Bangladesh's Supreme Court ruled that the veterans' quota must be cut down to 5%, with 93% of jobs to be allocated on the basis of merit. The government accepted the decision and restored internet, thinking that the situation would ease. But the protests only grew, with new demands for investigations into the deadly crackdowns and eventually for Hasina and her cabinet to step down. Ultimately, it's the people who won. Bangladesh now stands at a crossroads. The resignation of Sheikh Hasina marks the beginning of a new chapter in the nation's history. Will Bangladesh be able to wipe the slate clean, or will the country be plunged into the same autocratic rule that the people have rejected?
All right, let's try and also understand this from an India perspective. Like I said, Sheikh Hasina, for the better part of the last 15 years, was standing almost like a bulwark, guarding for India's interests in Bangladesh, guarding on the one side resurgent Islamists, on the other side keeping the army at bay. Remember, the Bangladeshi army has from time to time indulged in a coup. And then, of course, there is, of course, the geopolitical factor keeping China and Pakistan at bay. What happens now with her exit from the center stage of power in Bangladesh, and how does India deal with this slightly tricky situation? She's here in India for the time being until one of the Western countries, UK or any other European country, grants her some form of political asylum. But the longer she stays here, the more people in Bangladesh, especially the protesting students and others who are happy to see her back, they are going to see India as almost synonymous with letting Hasina escape. So how does India navigate that tricky terrain as well? Because whatever new dispensation comes to power in Bangladesh, India has to do business with that dispensation. Joining me now is Kanwal Sibal, former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. Subir Bhaumik, senior journalist, is the author of The Crisis of India's Northeast. He's also joining us, and a little later on in the program, I'll also be joined by a former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh and former Deputy NSA, Pankaj Saran. But let me start with you, Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, first. So this is a bit of a tricky situation. Let's deal with the immediate problem at hand, which seems to be that, yes, Sheikh Hasina, as the Foreign Minister said in Parliament today, a call was made yesterday on short notice. She wanted to be brought to India, and the government of India, given the friendship and given what she has done for India and India-Bangladesh ties over the last 3 decades of hers in public life, the government of India couldn't say no. So they've brought her in, but she's still in an undisclosed location in Delhi. Whether she goes to the UK or any other European country, that seems to be a bit uncertain right now. How does India navigate this? On the one hand, you don't want to be seen as betraying a long-standing friend, but at the same time, today she is politically persona non grata in Bangladesh. The longer she stays here, the longer the impression gets cemented amongst all of those protesting students and others that it was India who was actually responsible for helping her escape.
Well, I don't think we should be too much intimidated by these kind of concerns. After all, she was the leader of Bangladesh, with which we had excellent relations, and she contributed a lot in terms of strengthening our bilateral ties. And if for safety reasons, she has sought refuge in India, then we must give her refuge. After all, there's a lot of demand that we give refuge to minorities who are escaping from neighboring countries and this and that. And here's the leader of a country who could have been killed, like her father was killed. But the army chief allowed her to leave the country at short notice, which she did. And the obvious destination and the immediate destination, until her plans mature, would be India. And India should have the minimum courtesy of giving her as much time as she wants to decide her future. Now, whether the other side, the protesters and others, will understand this as India playing diplomatic games or somehow protecting Sheikh Hasina's future, I think if there are elements in Bangladesh who think like that, let them think like that. Because there is absolutely no evidence that either she wants to return to Bangladesh, once again to be in politics. Her son has said very clearly that she is fed up and she doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And there is no reason why India would want to put his foot into this quagmire. And after she has been virtually expelled from the country, keep her political ambitions, if they are any, alive. Doesn't make any sense. And right-thinking people on Bangladesh side would understand this, and we have channels of communication. And we can explain what the reasons are for her to have what could be a prolonged stay in India if she so wishes. She's not going to be allowed any political activity. The fact that she's at the Hindon base means that she's not in the capital city. She's not meeting political activists or sympathizers from Bangladesh. She's
Okay.
not conspiring to do politics and this and that. I don't think we should worry too much about the impact of this.
Okay.
Yes, the problem would arise if we were to give her a platform to do politics from India, which we have no intention of doing.
So let me ask Subir Bhaumik this. The trickier, more medium to long-term problem is how does India engage with whatever new dispensation comes to power in Bangladesh next. Already, the BNP leader, Khaleda Zia, who's a former prime minister, the cases against her have been set aside. She's been released from jail. There is talk that her son, Tariq Rahman, who's been living in exile in London for the last 10 years plus, there could be some form of return for him back to the active political scene in Bangladesh. The Jamaat-e-Islami, which was banned by Hasina first, and then subsequently that ban was upheld by the Supreme Court of Bangladesh. There's now chatter, no less than the army chief has said, that the ban will be revoked. So if it's going to be back to the days of the BNP and the Jamaat-e-Islami, how does India engage with that dispensation? Because at the end of the day, Indian interests still have to be taken care of.
Well, Zaka, at the moment, there is a lot of question mark over what dispensation is going to emerge. Because the students clearly want Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus to take charge. And they want a lot of professional civil society people there. But the army is playing some game here, and I'm given to understand from my deep sources in Bangladesh that a lot of these leaders who were, or a lot of these personalities were given to understand that they will be part of the interim government which the army announced, army chief said will be set up, went to the president's house, the Rashtrapati Bhavan there, and they have not yet come back. And there is a lot of haggling going on. On the one side, the army, which is promoting the BNP Jamaat thing, and the students who have clearly said, we don't want the Awami League, we don't want the BNP. And we are not going to take the blame for the orgy of violence unleashed yesterday by the Jamaat cadres, in which scores of policemen, Awami League leaders have been killed, Hindu houses, Hindu temples have been targeted. The students are of a secular bent of mind. I know quite a few of them. Some of them come from a left political background. And they are very clear that they want a civilian government with people like Yunus, with people like Badiul Alam, with people like Asif Nazrul, these kind of characters. They have nothing to do with Jamaat. They have nothing to do with this Islamic politics. And therefore, the rift about what kind of a dispensation we are going to see in Dhaka in the days to come is not going to be a very easy process. You know, the haggling has already started.
Okay.
And therefore, I would go with Ambassador Sybil totally that we should not worry too much about what kind of reaction, because let me tell you one thing for clear. Having covered Bangladesh closely and being an East Bengali myself, I understand this country through my blood. Okay, let me tell you this. I'm telling you something. You know, whatever dispensation comes to take charge will not like to be seen as very pro-Indian. They would not like to get,
Yeah.
the same kind into the situation that Hasina. So they would be less than friendly than Hasina was. So in any case, why should we bother too much about these kind of reactions? I fully endorse, India, if it is a regional power, it should be able to take some stand on issues like this, and especially with long-term friends. So not only Hasina, a lot of
So
friends of India,
let,
not only in the Awami League but also in the secular politics,
let,
are already threatened. They're facing the heat.
let me
And
expand this with Ambassador Sybil. All right. I now have a special guest. I need to go to them. Thank you to go to him. Thank you very much to Ambassador Sybil and to Subir Bhowmik. I'm now joined by Mr. Sajeeb Wazed. He's the son of former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Thank you very much, Mr. Wazed, for joining us. First of all, have you gotten a chance to speak with your mother? What are her whereabouts? What is her state of mind like right now? Any information that you can share with our viewers?
I spoke with my mother yesterday. I have not had a chance to speak with her today. She's in Delhi. She's in good spirits. She's very disappointed at the situation. She's very disappointed at the people of Bangladesh, that after all that she has done for the country, transforming it from poverty-stricken, poor, failing country, what was considered the most corrupt country in the world, and she turned it around. She made it into a developing country, middle-income country. Extreme poverty was eliminated. The country was modernizing, and it was considered a rising tiger in Asia. And so, for this group of people, and I can assure you, it's not all the people of Bangladesh. Bangladesh has 175 million people. What you're seeing on the streets is just a small, tiny fraction of that population. So it's this vocal minority that has unfortunately demanded this, and now, well, they've gotten what they want. So now,
In your conversation yesterday, did you get a chance to, or was there any sort of reference to what exactly happened in those final few hours for her to sign the resignation papers and then, of course, take that flight to India? Can you describe for us what exactly happened? What did she tell you?
I've been speaking to her every day before that. She had planned to resign prior to that. She had planned to make an address to the nation, resign, and then set in motion the constitutional procedure for a new government. But however, then the mob started to march. They declared they would march and attack the prime minister's residence. And as soon as they were probably, once they had crossed into Dhaka and were headed towards the prime minister's residence, that is when she left, and she did not have time to make an address. But she had decided on resigning anyway, a day prior.
But tell me this, Mr. Wazed, was she threatened to resign by the folks in the army? Was she not given a choice? Because there were also media reports doing the rounds that she was upset with some sections of the army leadership that they were not able to quell these protests, despite the fact that the courts rescinded on that whole quota decision.
Not at all. She did not. There was no pressure. The army was fully supportive, in control. It was her decision because she did not want to use force when this armed mob, was moving towards Dhaka. The only way at that point to stop it is to use force, and she did not want bloodshed. She did not want a massacre of students, and that is why she had decided on her own to step down before that, and because she had given in to all their demands. We had changed the quotas, we had reduced quotas, we had formed a judicial commission to investigate all the deaths. We had suspended police officers who used excessive force. We gave in to all of their demands, but no matter it seemed that no matter what demand we accepted or gave accommodated, they kept escalating their demand. So then once all their demands were met, even for justice, then they escalated the demand to resignation. And at that point, my mother did not want a massacre of students.
So you said that you believe that this is a tiny minority, a vocal minority. This does not represent in any form or fashion the majority view or the majority opinion of the people of Bangladesh. Who are these people then? Who are these tiny minority and who's behind them?
Well, I mean, it's not a tiny minority, but it is the minority. It's the minority that has that boycotted the last few elections. Their supporters. Then is the other minority. I mean, in any country, in any democratic system, you're not going to have a party in power winning 100% of the vote. That is impossible. So, unfortunately, democracy is you participate in elections. If you don't win, you accept the results and wait for the next elections. These people don't want to do that. They've been trying to disrupt the elections for the last 3 elections. 2 elections prior, they conducted arson attacks, firebombing on civilians. Hundreds of civilians were killed. Thousands were burnt. So this is the same group. This is our opposition, the BNP Jamaat. They provided the muscle. And you have our so-called intellectuals who tried to take over power 17 years ago in the interim government then, and they're the ones now. But you look at the situation. This is, if you call them citizens, you're looking at the images. I'm looking at images on your that you're playing on your screen. This does not look like civil society. This does not look like normal citizens. This looks just like terrorists and vandals. It's complete anarchy.
When you saw those images of the statues of your grandfather, we're just playing out those pictures being desecrated and vandalized in the manner that they were, what were the thoughts that were running through your head?
My thoughts are that my family has done enough for this country. My family has been through this situation twice before. This is the 3rd time. First time was the coup, 3 coups essentially. And if the people of Bangladesh are this ungrateful, then they get the leadership they deserve. Right now, what they're getting is what the people of Bangladesh deserve. They wanted this.
I want to ask you about the here and now and what the immediate future looks like for your mother. So she's here in India. We're given to understand for a few days until whether it's the UK or any other European country decides to give her some form of political refuge. What would be her sort of first choice country in that sense, where she would go and want to spend the rest of her time?
We have not discussed that. No decision has been made in that regard. And the rumors that she has applied for asylum are untrue. She has not applied for asylum anywhere.
So where will she be for the rest of her time? Would she want to be here in India or any other country?
That I don't know. That has not been decided.
Have you approached the Indian government seeking some kind of refuge? After all, your mother was here for I think about 6 years back in the 70s after the first coup that you referred to. So would she be open to staying in India if the government of India were willing to grant her that?
I'm sure she would, yes. But I don't know. I have not discussed that with her.
But you are not sure whether she wants to stay in India or whether she wants to go to some Western country.
Right. Well, I think it would most likely be a place where she has family. So, I live here with I have my daughter here in London. My aunt lives with her daughters, and my aunt's daughters and their families are there. So, yes, I believe those would be possible choices. Yes.
So it would be either the UK or it would be the US. You're saying?
Or no, it could be India, but I honestly don't know. I do not want to misspeak on that.
Fair enough. I don't want to press too much on that. But I do want to know that for some time now, whether it is the political opposition in Bangladesh, the BNP and the Jamaat that you refer to, and even some Western countries had been accusing your mother of being almost autocratic, suppressing the political opposition, going after bloggers and journalists and civil society folks. So now they're saying this has come to pass, that what she was accused of is now what she is being faced with. How do you respond to that?
With regards to democracy and elections, if you look at the allegation of the last elections that there were mass arrests, well, if the people arrested were the ones who were involved in arson attacks in the previous election. So, if the only way those arrests were made to ensure the safety of the common citizens and to ensure a peaceful election. We did not want arson attacks again. We did not want thousands of people burnt and hundreds burnt alive. That is what happened. And if people want to accuse my mother of being an autocrat, that is completely untrue. Yes, there were mistakes made with bloggers. We had made a new law. Unfortunately, that law wasn't perfect, and the police started enforcing the law vigorously, and we responded immediately. Our government instructed the police and law enforcement to scale back enforcing the law, not for minor violations. And then we updated the law itself. So our government, no law, nothing is going to be perfect in a system, but anytime there is a mistake, our government fixed it. So no, our government wasn't cracking down on freedom of speech. Our government wasn't cracking down on the opposition. Our government was cracking down on the violent opposition, on BNP Jamaat, on Jamaat, that is a terrorist organization who conducted terror attacks and assassinations when they were in power. They attacked my mother. Hundreds of people killed. They even had attacked the then UK High Commissioner. They used to regularly attack minorities. And so, yes, my mother did suppress them.
I do want to ask you, there are a lot of theories floating around social media about, this being the handiwork of the deep state in the US, some saying this is a ISI plus China connection that has undone your mother from her political position of power. Do you give credence to any of this?
I'm sure there's some involvement. I don't have any hard evidence, but right from the beginning of the protests, they were incited deliberately. Initially, the protests were peaceful. Initially, there was no confrontation with our police. Our police were actually providing security for the protesters. But on one night, I believe it was July 15th, in the middle of the night at Dhaka University, you had some group marching, chanting, "We are Rajakar, we are Rajakar," which is the militants during our War of Independence that slaughtered civilians. And this is akin to marching in the middle of night in Jerusalem, chanting, "We are Nazis, we are Nazis." So naturally, some of our students reacted. There were confrontations. The police, in trying to stop the violence, unfortunately used excessive force. And then the protesters used that as an excuse to demand, to escalate the violence. And I think so that was a key turning point. And I believe that was incited by someone deliberately to inflame the situation, to prevent our government from, because we had accepted the students' demands for quotas at that point.
Who was inciting them?
That we don't know. That is the million-dollar question. Nobody knows. Nobody knows the identity of those people.
Do you think they were being incited by domestic elements or elements from the outside?
Either is possible.
But you wouldn't rule out the possibility of a foreign hand?
Not at all. I wouldn't rule that out at all.
The US in particular, and I was here at the G20 when your mother was here along with your sister, and they met with President Joe Biden. The United States has been pretty critical about your mother's ways when it comes to democracy, freedom of expression, the opposition, and so on and so forth. Were there conversations that you've had in this regard, and what is it that your mother had to say in her defense about it? Or do you believe that this was some kind of canard being spread against her regime?
No, of course mistakes were made. Mistakes are always made, but that's the difference. Is ours was a responsible government. We people in the government who made mistakes, we made changes. We made changes in policy. We made changes in law. We made changes in implementation. We changed instructions to the police. And those who did use excessive force, those who did commit extrajudicial killings, we brought them to justice. We had one former minister's son. He's in prison for murder because he was involved in extrajudicial killings while he was in the police. And this is a minister's son. So to accuse our government, we cannot. yes, individuals might have gone overboard, but our government brought justice. And so to constantly accuse our government of human rights violations, of cracking down on freedom, is completely wrong. If no mistakes are allowed, if you cannot blame everything on my mother. If someone lower down makes a mistake and our government corrects it right away, but that is what was being done.
Will your mother ever go back to Bangladesh?
No, she has no interest. Seeing the desecration of my grandfather's statues, seeing my grandfather's home and museum where my entire family was slaughtered, being burned to the ground, my mother and I, my whole family, we are quite fed up with the people of Bangladesh. If this is what the people of Bangladesh want, good luck to them.
And neither you nor your sister would be interested in any kind of roll back home in Bangladesh after seeing what you've seen yesterday?
After seeing this, no, not really.
Okay. All right. Mr. Sajeeb Wazed, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your thoughts. And yes, of course, our thoughts are with you and your family and your mother. And we'll be on top of this story as well here for our viewers on CNN News 18 to try and see what happens next. Of course, right now, she is in an undisclosed safe location here in Delhi. We're given to understand for a few days and then subsequently onwards to another destination, but we will see how that plays out. I want to go across now and try and get a sense of how India will have to navigate this, because remember, this is going to be a bit of a diplomatic puzzle that India will have to sort of walk around, because there is this perception that India was backing Sheikh Hasina through and through, including in the last few days, arranging for her safe passage. The fact that she's here in India, even if it's for a few days, it will deepen the perception amongst those people who are protesting, and certainly the political opposition in Bangladesh, that India was very much sort of hitching its wagons entirely with Sheikh Hasina, who, for all practical purposes, in today's Bangladesh, is a political persona non grata. So how does India navigate that one with whatever dispensation comes to power in Bangladesh next? And more importantly, there is also a geopolitical angle to this with Pakistan, with China. Remember, Pakistan-Bangladesh ties were at rock bottom. They expelled each other's diplomats. They didn't have any high-level formal diplomatic connections anymore. China has been trying really hard to incorporate Bangladesh fully and in center of the One Belt, One Road initiative as far as South Asia is concerned. And Sheikh Hasina was being seen, certainly by some quarters in China, as the one who was standing in the way. So how does India navigate this? Pankaj Saran is a former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh. He's also former Deputy National Security Advisor. First things first, I want to talk about the more immediate, more pressing problem, which is Sheikh Hasina. She's right now in India. We don't know for how long. Speculation was that she would like to go either to the UK or some other European country, but those countries are not exactly forthcoming in receiving her or in giving her some kind of political refuge. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, look, I think this is a very dynamic situation. Frankly, a lot of it is speculation about what India's plans were and what Sheikh Hasina herself wanted to do. It's not actually very clear. So we are basically going by speculation and hearsay. The fact is that she is in India, that India flew her out. She is clearly in Delhi, and she's safe, physically speaking. She has been a friend of India's, not just for the last 15 years, but I think ever since the assassination of her father in 1975. So I think it is expected that India would stand by its friends. That is, I think, something which our neighbors are watching, the world is watching, and I think this is the least that we owe to a long-standing friend. With regard to whether this is a transit halt or it is going to be longer, frankly, there's, as I said, speculation. Insofar as the West is concerned, my only difficulty with the West is their adoption of double standards If we talk about democracy and dictators and everything else, if anyone has had a record of supporting dictatorships around the world
Okay.
to serve national security interests, I think the Western nations and Western democracies have led the way.
I do
Whether
want to
it is
ask
in
you, Mr.
Egypt
Saran,
or in
there have been
Philippines
rumblings,
or
of
in
course,
Indonesia.
of a CIA hand and the ISI getting involved and all of that. Those, I mean, I don't want to give too much credence to that. Those could be just conspiracy theories. But at the end of the day, did Sheikh Hasina's unpopularity, and given these pictures that we're seeing, I think there's no doubt in anybody's minds that people are actually celebrating her exit. Was it her unpopularity, her disconnect with the large population that actually undid her rule?
When Tariq Rahman, the son of Khalida Zia, was exiled from Bangladesh in 2006,
Yeah.
the country he took refuge in was the United Kingdom. So the United Kingdom seemed to have no problem in hosting him since 2006 or 7, despite the fact that he was loathed and hated and he was a wanted man in Bangladesh. I think we have to grow up as a country. We have to learn how to play the game. Number one. Number two, these are moments of highly inflamed passion. Clearly, she's unpopular, she's disliked. But a lot of the dislike and the loathing is coming from her political opponents. I'm not quite sure, I'm not able to make out how much of it is coming from the students. Of course, there's anger among the students, I'm not saying that. But the fact of the matter is that within the anger of the students and the rest of the country, we cannot escape the fact that there is also a political element of settling scores with Hasina. So, yes, I agree that right now she is an extremely unpopular person in Bangladesh.
Okay.
But popularity or unpopularity has not determined actions by other nation states.
Okay, so I do
in
also
similar
want to ask you, Mr.
situations.
Saran, then
And,
this potential BNP Jamaat, the political opponents of the Awami League and of Sheikh Hasina that you refer to, a potential union of BNP and Jamaat coming to power again in Bangladesh like we saw between 2001 and 2008, do you see that happening again? Will that be the next dispensation in Dhaka? And if so, how does India navigate that?
So the names of the parties may be the same, but the people are different. The BNP may remain as the BNP, but the constituents of the BNP are different. Khalida Zia today is physically incapacitated. Her son is in exile in London. I don't see him coming back. The BNP is rudderless, they don't have a leader. The Jamaat has the same name, but the entire leadership is totally different. So I don't think you can take any lessons from the past. We are in a new situation, new realities, younger leaderships in both these formations, and their experiences, historically speaking, are very different. Their mindsets are very different. But how this will shape up in the coming days is something which we will discover only as we go along. The only thing we can learn from the past is their track record, which has been very detrimental to India. But at the same time, we must also recognize that there has been an evolution in both these formations.
Okay.
There are other Islamic parties that have been born in the last 20 years. The BNP has undergone several changes. It has, in fact, in my opinion, been significantly marginalized. I think today they are a junior partner of the Jamaat-e-Islami. Tables have turned completely in favor of the Jamaat and against the BNP. So the BNP, like the Awami League, was a party led by the family of General Zia Rahman. And today that family is at a dead end, just almost like the Awami League. So we are entering new uncharted territory of new political actors.
There is also the geopolitical angle to it, which is that particularly when Sheikh Hasina was in power, we've seen the depths to which the diplomatic relationship between Bangladesh and Pakistan went to. They expelled each other's diplomats. And even China has been trying very hard to expand its foothold in Bangladesh. They've been wanting to get the Chittagong port in a full-fledged manner as part of the One Belt, One Road. That didn't happen. Do you see Pakistan and China and that nexus expanding its influence again in whatever new dispensation comes to power in Dhaka?
Yeah, I think definitely the influence of both particularly Pakistan will grow. China always had an influence. I mean, even remember under Hasina, 70% of the Bangladeshi defense equipment was from China. There was a submarine base in Bangladesh. So the Chinese never really had a problem under Hasina. I don't see that changing very much. The net accretion to influence will be of Pakistan. But having said all that, the Pakistanis will make a grave error if they think that they can rewind back to prior to 1971 or relive the days of 1975. This is a new Bangladesh. The images we are seeing are real, but they're also of young men and women, 20-year-olds. These people know nothing. They are not questioning the existence of Bangladesh.
Okay.
Pakistan believes, and it is making the same mistake it made in Afghanistan, thinking that it can in somehow reinvent the past. That is not going to happen.
All right,
Bangladesh
Pankaj Saran,
is
we'll
today
leave it at that.
a-
Thank you very much. The former Deputy National Security Advisor, also former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh, giving us his thoughts and perspective on what is likely to happen next and how India might have to navigate that diplomatic minefield. Right now, before we take a break, let's go into a deep dive. And I'm picking off from the last answer that Mr. Saran gave about how the geopolitical dynamics in this emerging flux, how it might actually give both China and Pakistan a little bit more of a foothold, much more than what they had when Hasina was in power, and whether or not these global geopolitical dynamics were one of the reasons behind the fall of Sheikh Hasina, the maneuverings behind the scenes, both by the United States on the one side, because remember they had been extremely critical of Hasina and what they called her autocratic ways when it comes to democracy, dealing with political opponents, jailing of civil society actors, etc. on the one hand, and then on the other hand, the China-Pakistan nexus, which was wanting further and further strategic influence and depth in Bangladesh in a way to have show of strength or projection of power, if you will, in the wider Indian Ocean region. So let's go into that right now.
Beneath the several questions being asked around what next for Sheikh Hasina lies the first big question on what led to Sheikh Hasina's downfall in Bangladesh. Why did she have to resign and depart from Bangladesh? Is it solely to be seen as the victory of Bangladesh's students' movement? Or should one explore the several external pressures that Sheikh Hasina and her Awami League were facing to understand if the two could be linked? So yes, it could be as simple as this being a result of the protest that initially broke out in July against the quota system in government jobs and how it then evolved into a broader revolt coupled with other internal factors like growing frustration of the youth around job stagnation in private sector, high inflation after a relatively high growth period, declining growth, dwindling foreign exchange reserves, and perhaps her growing arrogance, as some say. Let's also not forget that on 14 July, Hasina made a controversial statement referring to the Razakars, which also contributed to an escalation in students' protest. But all these reasons don't mean there wasn't more brewing beneath it all. Could this be a result of an external sabotage, as is being alleged by Hasina's supporters? There are few players that need to be discussed. Let's start with Pakistan. Sheikh Hasina's party has been accusing Pakistan of interfering in the internal affairs of the country through its tactic support and active guidance to the student protesters in the country. Remember, Pakistan's interests in ousting Hasina cannot be ruled out given the history the two share. After Bangladesh Liberation War, Sheikh Hasina has had every reason to be anti-Pakistan. Pakistan Army jailed her father, also slaughtered thousands of Bangladeshis, and same goes for Pakistan. Till date, Pakistan Army has held the 1971 war against Sheikh Hasina. What makes it more complicated is the relationship the two main opposition parties in the country enjoy with Pakistan. The first is Jamaat-e-Islami, an Islamist group which has been working to implement the Islamic code of life and is accused of collaborating with Pakistani forces through the years. The second big opposition force is the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or the BNP, led by Khalida Zia, which is also believed to be backed by Pakistan Army and ISI, especially in its bid to come back to power in the country. In fact, the Sheikh Hasina administration is often alleged that ISI has been orchestrating plans in collaboration with Tariq Rahman, who is not only Khalida Zia's son, but also the acting chairman of BNP and operates from his base in London. Now, the other player being spoken of by Hasina's party is the United States. In fact, what gave fuel to these speculations is the remark made by Hasina months after winning the elections and securing a fifth straight term for her government. She informed her party men at a meeting that she was offered a hassle-free re-election if she allowed a foreign country to build an airbase inside Bangladesh. She emphasized that the offer came from a white man and also suspected that declining the offer would mean trouble for her. But she was ready to fight a battle both at home and abroad and conveyed the same to her party. Remember, Washington has indeed been critical of Sheikh Hasina and also maintained that the recent re-election hasn't been free or fair. Hasina, in fact, has been accusing the United States of plotting a regime change in Dhaka. Remember, these allegations against a world player like the United States aren't new. Imran Khan also held the United States responsible for toppling his government in Pakistan. And while there is no hard proof to substantiate these claims, the possibility cannot be ruled out in its entirety. While the US meddling angle is being alleged by Hasina's party, it will have to be proven. Viewers, while one fact is that the 15-year dominance of Sheikh Hasina has come to an end, another fact is that despite facing several internal problems, she kept radical Islamists at bay, and that wasn't lost on India. But was that enough for the United States? Doesn't look like, because America under Joe Biden was constantly ramping up pressure against Dhaka while giving a free pass to the likes of Pakistan, Egypt and also Saudi Arabia. The rest, which way this goes, only time will tell, but the needle could be pointing at anyone.
माई भाई, मैंने भी इस बार एसआईपी करके म्यूचुअल फंड में पैसे डाले। तो मुझे ये जानना था कि केवाईसी का चक्कर क्या है।
म्यूचुअल फंड सही है .com या अपने म्यूचुअल फंड की वेबसाइट पे जाओ, पैन नंबर डालो और सिर्फ इतना देखो कि तुम्हारा केवाईसी स्टेटस रजिस्टर्ड है या वैलिडेटेड।
रजिस्टर्ड हो तो
आधार और पैन कार्ड के साथ अपना केवाईसी वैलिडेट करो, जरूरी है और ज्यादा वक्त भी नहीं लगता।
और वैलिडेटेड हो तो
सही है।
सही है माई भाई, अब तक इन्वेस्ट किया ना हो तो
केवाईसी कर लो और मैदान में उतरो।
सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
How would you describe the pretty significant and some would say historic events that have played out in Bangladesh today within a matter of hours? A long-standing ruler, a long-standing prime minister has been ousted. She's now fled to India, and we're given to understand that she's possibly en route to London.
Yeah, it's a celebration now all over Bangladesh that she has left. Now they're free from her. This was something that they're hoping someday will happen. The students made it happen, but the students' idea was not to get her out. They were simply demonstrating for a simple reason, for quota arrangements that we had. They didn't like it. They wanted to change it. They were just amending the quota. That little demonstration became uglier and uglier because government wanted to shoot at them. They did shoot them, they killed them, continued with them. And then they brought paramilitary. Still, students become larger and larger in number. And then they brought the army. It becomes still larger, and killing continued to grow. Yesterday, there were 97 young people were killed yesterday alone. So you can see that what simple thing made a very complicated thing. And now she had to leave the country because of the things that she have done over years. And this is the failure of democracy. She didn't want democracy to be in Bangladesh. She had fake elections, never had a real election. And these young people who were 1/3 of the country, 2/3 of the whole population of the country, never voted in their life. They never had a chance to go and vote. They didn't know how its democratic system works. So this is something accumulated. All the pent-up anger burst into volcanic eruption. That's what just happened today.
So the immediate trigger, of course,
like a celebration of liberation, like we had in the 16th of December in 1971. The similar celebration is going on all over the country. This is a new liberation that they feel they have.
So the immediate trigger, of course, was, like you said, was about this quota system, which, of course, the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, whittled it down. They reduced it down to just about 5%, I believe. You think the manner in which the Hasina government responded to these students, the shooting, the firing, the almost repression of these protests, that is what led to her ouster from power, not so much the quota itself, because after the Supreme Court's decision, I believe the protests had subsided for a bit.
It started again because of the utterances made and the killing continued. Students came back again with their parents joined them, neighbors joined them. It became an ocean of people gradually all over the country. It's not just located in. This is not a Dhaka demonstration. This is a countrywide demonstration. Every single person is participating in that because they want to get rid of Hasina.
What do you think happens next? The army has said that they are going to put in place an interim government. Do you see elections in the near future? What may those throw up? Will the main opposition party, the BNP, come back to power? How do you see this playing out politically?
One of the things I've been emphasizing right from the beginning, the cure for all this political trouble is to have a fair election, because people have to express themselves in a political way, what they want that they never had in their young people's life. So this will be an occasion, have an election, have a caretaker government, and caretaker government will be responsible for election. And caretaker government was introduced with the insistence of Awami League, and Awami League made it part of the constitution. As soon as Hasina came to power, she scrapped it completely. So that thing gone. I said that was the cure for Bangladesh, have a caretaker government so that they can have a fair and transparent election. So the election is in the control of Hasina. So Hasina made it her own game to re-elect herself without any vote. So this is the core problem of Bangladesh. And the rest of it is just an outcome of what happened, corruptions and everything else, and killing people, disappearing people, and all the thing that you hear in the newspapers or read in the newspaper.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for our future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.
Presented by
মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী পদত্যাগ করেছেন এবং এখন একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্ম করে আমরা আমাদের কার্যক্রম পরিচালনা করব।
বাসভবনের দিকে আমরা ওই জায়গায় ঘেরাও দেবো, এরপর দেখবো যে সে আছে কিনা। সম্ভবত সে নেই। বাংলাদেশ এই 14 বছর পর আবার 16 বছর পর আবার স্বাধীন হলো।